Hello everyone, and welcome back to the How to Build an RTS Game from Start to Finish series, where we learn how to build a game from the ground up while completely at the mercy of you guys. Hey guys, in our last video we did part 2 of adding the ability to spawn units, where we added some UI and prepared our buildings to start spawning the units. If you guys haven't seen that one yet, I'll leave a link in the card and in the description below, so be sure to check that out because we're going to be using the same project as before. And again, this is on GitHub now, so the newest version is going to be pushed now, so if you want to compare notes on that, please do. And again, if you guys want to support us, please even just subscribing or leaving comments on the channel really helps with the algorithm and stuff. So it just gets more of us in here and being able to hang out together and get into Discord. It's just awesome being able to talk to you guys from time to time. So, yeah. Anyways, so let's just go on ahead and get right into it. But before we go too far, and I hope I don't mispronounce this name too bad, but Irfan R from Discord pointed out that there was a bit of code that wasn't working quite properly. So let's go on ahead and change that first. And where that is that's in the last script that we did. So let's go into our action frame, open that up into Visual Studio, and in our clear actions right here, we actually need to do this slightly different. So what I'm going to do is we need to specify that we want to destroy the game object first. Okay. Um, oops, not that one. We want to destroy the game object. And then I'm actually just going to remove this. And now on the outside of this, so once we've destroyed the buttons, we're just going to buttons, buttons dot clear. So then we're just going to clear the list all at once. And that's actually a little bit more performance on this, and it's just a better way to do it in general. So good job seeing that and pointing that out. I really appreciate that. So I'm just going to save this now. So let's go on ahead and make our action button just a little bit more uh, pretty, so to speak. So we're going to make it to where our action button is going to look a little bit more um, like it's going to add a unit specifically. So I'm going to actually drag it into here so I can see it easier. And then I'm just going to right click on action, and we're going to create an image. Okay. And I'm just going to call this plus, I guess. And now I'm just going to scale this down quite a bit. I'm just doing this by eye because it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to recenter it, pull this down. I do kind of want it to be at least fairly close. Okay, cool. And now I'm actually going to duplicate this, and then on this one we'll just move that so I see the rotations, and we'll just rotate it 90 degrees. Highlight both of them. I'm probably going to do something like green. I'm actually going to create an empty under this as well. So, and we'll just call this, let's call it action graphics. I'm just going to slap that under there. And now this is what I'm actually going to make into a prefab. So I'm going to drop that in with my action button. Now I'll remove both of those. Perfect. Now what I want to do is actually go to our basic building script and our basic units, which I don't have open in here. So let's go to Let's see, basic building, and we have units, basic unit. Okay, so in these two scripts, what I want to do is we're actually going to specify where this graphic is going to come from that we just created. So right down here, I'm going to put public, and we'll just do a game object since we made that outer one to kind of hold the graphics. And I'll just call it the icon. And so we want to do that in both. So that's basic units and basic buildings get to have their own icon as well. So public game object, icon, oops, icon, perfect. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and go in here now before I forget, and I'm going to add these graphics. See, for me, I'm going to just add the same one to all of these, but if you have your own graphics and stuff like that, now is the time to, change what those graphics would be like on the inside. And so then I'll also do that for the barracks. So action graphics, perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the action frame script again. And from here, we're going to start kind of putting some of this stuff to use. So let's go to our set actions buttons. And remember where we said that we could add some more stuff? Let's go ahead and add the icon. So we'll say game object icon equals instantiate unit dot icon, and we'll make the button its parent. And so I'm just going to do the same thing here, but for the buildings. And instead of unit, I'll just say building. Okay, great. So let's actually test this really fast and make sure it's working properly. Last thing we want is to run into an error down the road. So it's kind of better to test as you go anyway. So now when we click on the building, now we get our graphic that pops up in there too. And we can click away, we can do everything. Everything seems to be working great. Awesome. Okay, so now let's go back into our action frame script. And we're going to kind of get ready to start spawning some things. So let's add a few functions here. First, I'm going to do public void. Maybe we'll do, let's call it spawn maybe. Fair enough. And we'll do a string object to spawn. Perfect. And then I want to make another one. So we'll do a private units basic unit. And this is going to be a function based on that class. So what we're basically going to treat this as is almost like a Boolean in a way, but we want it to actually return the unit that comes out of this, which is why we're doing it this way. So then we'll do the same thing for buildings. So buildings build dot basic building, and we'll call this is building, and we just want a string name, and again we will return this as null for now. Okay, so now we can start kind of filling up our spawn function just a little bit. And the way I want to do this is we'll just check if it is unit object to spawn. So we're just going to feed that into it. Then we'll do something with that. Else if is building. So if maybe we can create a building or something. Object to spawn. Oops. And then if it's neither, then we'll just debug log. And we'll do like a object spawn is not a spawn. Wait, what? Oh, I went all the way out. Is not a spawnable object. Okay. So that's starting to get us set up here just a little bit. But we want to change our player action script just a little bit here as well. So let's go on ahead and get that opened. And we should, we want to change these. I don't want this to be an array. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to make this a list just by doing this. And we're going to do the same thing to the buildings. So I'm going to make this a list. Okay. And then I'll save this. And what we do also want to add here is we probably want a spawn time. But we don't necessarily need that here actually. Let's go back to our actual units and add another public, let's make it a float. And spawn time. Okay, that's in our basic unit. Now we also have to do it in the basic building. So public float spawn time. And now let's go to our actions frame again, and we'll continue to work on our spawn function. But I think first we need to figure out what these are before this will even work. So let's work on this a little bit. So we want to say basically if our actions, isn't that actions? Oh, so we never actually, we can set this to a different list is what we're actually going to have to do. So let's just make a private list, and oh well, we'll have to call it player actions, and we'll just call it actions list, and we'll just set that to null for now. And what I want to do is I'm basically just going to check from that list. So let's set that equal to these actions. So we'll do actions list is equal to actions. Okay. Now, oh, and so we're going to have to change this because we made it a list now, right? So we're going to have to say count. Count and count. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our unit functions, and let's say if our actions list, we'll check its basic units for this, right? So basic units dot count is greater than 0. So first we want to know if there are even any of these at all. Because if there's not, then we're just, if there's no need to run extra code and do all the checking. So then we'll do for each units.basic unit in our actions list, dot basic units. Oh, we needed to name the unit. So for each one of these, we just want to know if the unit name is equal to the string name that we pass into here. And if it is, then we want to return the unit. And that should just about do it. So let's also do the same thing for the buildings. So we're just gonna do if actions list dot basic buildings. Oops. Actions list dot basic buildings dot count. If it's greater than 0, then for each building, basic building, we'll call it a building, in our actions list dot basic buildings. And we'll do the same thing. So if the building dot name is equal to the name that we passed in here, then we're going to return the building. Okay, and that should handle us. Now, let's we need a way to send this information, which is actually going to come from the button that we click on. And since each button's different, we can't actually do it from here. So let's go create another script. And we'll put this in the same spot, I think. So let's call it, let's see, create C# script. Let's just call it an action, because that's what the buttons actually are that pop up. And let's open this up, get it ready for code. So again, I always delete the inside. I do my namespace, so namespace lp.fdg.ui.hud. Okay, and then Control X and Control V. Now, we basically just want to send some information once we click on it. So we're just going to do public void on click, and we'll just do like action frame dot instance dot spawn. You know what? That function doesn't actually spawn them yet. What we should do is actually call that function something like start spawn timer. Yeah. And then we'll go back to our action and we'll say instance.start spawn timer. And we want to give it a name. So the name we're going to give it, we're just going to type name. Because what this does is it's grabbing the name of the game object that this is attached to. And since when we create the button, we name it after the item that it is, like what the thing is that's going to be spawned. So like button name is equal to unit name. So we can just use the name from that button. And that'll send over our name to our action frames, and now it's going to start doing this stuff. And before we forget, because I do this a lot, let's go to our button prefab that we made this action, and let's drag the action script on here. Now, we're going to hit this plus button and drag the action prefab back into it. We're going to go to action and we'll go to on click. So now that'll apply it to every single button that we have. And since we're instantiating a lot of buttons as we go, it's nice that it can just do that automatically. So now that we have that on there, let's, well, I don't actually want to do that in here. So let's create another script, and we'll call this one action timer. Action timer, yep. And once my thing loads, let's come in here and set namespace, and we'll do lp.fdg.ui HUD and pop. Okay. So first, there's going to be a couple things we need here. So let's do a public, excuse me, static action timer instance equals null, and then we'll do on awake instance equals this. Okay. To make a timer, I don't want to abuse an update function and keep like checking if I need to do something. So we're going to create something called a coroutine. And so how we're going to do this, we're going to do public I enumerator, this one, I enumerator. I'll say spawn queue timer. Okay, now this is sort of like those other functions that we did where they kind of have to return a value in a way, but these yield something. So I'm just going to say if our action frame dot instance dot spawn, what? Instance dot I can't use that same one. So let's come back to this. Let's go back into our action frames. We need to create another list here because we want a way to be able to know what order each one of these units were added in. So let's just make this a list of game objects. We'll just call it spawn queue. Yeah, this should do it, right? No, because we want to have that timer that we set earlier. So let's do a float. So we'll do float. Oops, we want it to be a list of floats, and we'll just call it spawn queue with a lowercase s, spawn queue. That's fine. We'll just do that. Equals new list float. Okay, so basically what we want to do here is we'll reset this in a second, but we're going to come over here just so we can finish this because this won't take long. So we're going back into our action timer, and we're going to check our spawn queue count. So if we have things in the queue, so it's got like if it's greater than 0, oops, I just said spawn queue dot count is greater than 0. Then basically here, let's do a debug.log, and I'll say, I don't know, waiting for action frame.instance.spawn queue 0, so the first one in the queue, that many seconds. And so the way that you actually wait for seconds in these um, coroutines is we can actually yield, uh, so yield new, wait, it's yield return new wait for seconds. And so the amount of seconds that we want to wait for is going to be the actual spawn time that it takes that whatever we're trying to spawn to spawn. So let's check our action frame dot instance dot spawn queue and the first one in the queue. So once we're done counting down with that, we'll probably want to action frame dot instance dot spawn queue dot remove and we're going to remove that item that we just went through. So action frame dot instance dot spawn queue. We're going to remove the first one. Okay. Now we need to be able to loop through this if needed. So we'll just say if action frame dot instance dot spawn queue dot count is greater than 0. Even after we remove that one, if it's still greater than 0, then we're going to start the coroutine called spawn queue timer. So essentially it's calling itself again. If this function is true, then this just keeps looping over and over and over and over and over again. So in order to actually fully make this work, we need to go back to our action frame script and start setting how this stuff works. So we also kind of want to get them in the right order here when we actually spawn them. So let's make another public list, and we'll make this game objects so we know which ones to spawn. We'll just call them, well, spawn order actually sounds good. Order, so spawn order, and then equals new list of game objects. Okay, so in our, there we are, start spawn timer function. We want to know, or we want to set our, let's see, units dot basic unit. We'll just call this a unit is equal to is unit, Jesus, object to spawn. So now we're setting this unit. So right now we're just saying, is this returning an actual value or is it returning null? If it does return a value, I want to set unit as that value. And then we're going to set our spawn queue, and we'll add unit dot, we'll add that spawn time. And then in our spawn order, we'll add the unit dot human prefab. Okay. Now, if it's a building, well, we're basically going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. But instead of basic units, we're going to say, you know, buildings dot basic building. We'll call it a building. I'm going to say is building. And then unit again changes to building. And this changes to building. Oh, and it's not a human prefab, it's going to be the building prefab. What did I do here? Oh, did I spell something wrong? I did. It's building. There we go. Managed to do it in 2 spots. Okay, so now if this does actually return an actual item, then we're setting these inside of, we're grabbing the spawn timers and all of that that we set earlier. So now we also want to make sure that we start this coroutine over here that we set up. We want to be able to start this only when it's important to start it. So let's do it here. Because this is where we're adding things to the list anyway. So I'm just going to say if my spawn queue dot count is equal to 1, then I'll do action timer dot instance dot start coroutine, and we want it to start its action timer dot instance dot spawn queue timer, and then we'll say else if our spawn queue dot count is equal to 0, meaning there's nothing left in it, then we're going to stop all coroutines. Okay. And so the reason that I split these up the way that I did, well, and one, it's important to kind of keep certain things, together and grouped. But the way this code works in all of our scripts is that it only does one line at a time. So if we were stuck in this loop right here, we could never add anything else or check anything else because it only does one line at a time. And if it's in here and then it has to restart, then it can never get back to somewhere else until it stops. So while it's doing its thing over here and doing all the counting, we can still do other stuff over here with our action frames. And so that's a huge reason of why I wanted to pull it out of there. So let's actually go on ahead and change something here, because I just realized we're going to need to have a spawn point eventually, right? So let's add we'll just do a game object. Let's call it spawn location. Okay. And the reason I want that is because we're going to set that to something else. So let's do public game object spawn point. Doesn't need to be public, actually. Well, just in case, we'll leave it that way for now. Equals null. Okay, so this spawn point, we're going to literally just set it right in here. So, I think not here. Let's move that, because when we set the buttons, we want to know the building that it's actually coming from. And so this will set that actual building. So then I'll just say spawn point is equal to spawn location. Okay. So now the only way for this to actually work is for us to go back into Unity, and we need to go to our where is it? Oh, here it is, iBuilding. Now in these functions here, see, now it's not working. So we're just gonna say game object. So we're gonna send it self as the spawn point, but later on we can create ways to set the spawn point, and that's where we would pass it through. So that makes sure that works now. Now we need to let's actually go back into our action frame script and start trying to spawn some of these bad boys. So let's go on ahead and create a spawn function. So public void, we'll call it spawn object. Okay, and we'll do a game object. Game object. We'll call it the spawned object is equal to instantiate the spawn order first one in the list, because that's the one that we're counting down on our timers. And then we're just gonna do kind of like a random position for now. So let's just do the spawn point. Well, let's do vector 3. I'll have to do new vector 3, and we'll do the spawn point dot transform dot position dot x. Let's just do like -4, and then spawn point dot transform dot position dot y, and spawn point dot transform dot position dot z. Okay, now we need to set its rotation. And so we're going to do quaternion dot identity. That's just going to set it to its already preset rotations that we have for it. And we're not going to set a parent yet either, because there's going to be some processes to figure out whether it's going to be a human, warrior, healer, whether it's, maybe we're creating a building. So we're just going to skip that for now. So our health. So the reason we're going to do this is because if we don't, the characters that we spawn are just going to die right away. So for now, we're just going to manually set this. But we're going to have a better and cooler way to do this later on, to make it a little bit more dynamic for everybody. But so we're going to do the spawned object, which is the one we just created. We're going to get the component that is units dot player unit. So we're going to grab that script that we know is on that prefab, and we're going to do what is it, base stats? Yeah, base stats dot health. We're just going to set it to like 50, just to keep it alive for now, to make this work. And then we'll do a I think this is probably good. Let's save this, and we need to go back to our action timer. Now this is where all the magic's happening. So it's counting down. As soon as it finishes counting, meaning after the yield wait for seconds, and before it destroys the object, we're going to do action frame dot instance dot spawn object. Okay. Now that it's going to spawn the object, we need to go on ahead and save this. But there's a little trick that we're going to have to do here. So before any of this works, because I'm sure you guys have noticed that anywhere you click on the screen removes your UI stuff. So here, I'll just show you. So if we go into game object, or into the game view, and we select our item or our building, and we try to hit the button, you see it's deselecting everything because I'm clicking somewhere. So we need to fix that. And it's actually a fairly simple fix. We need to go to our, is it under player? Nope. Here we go, input manager. We're going to go to the input handler. Okay. So as that takes its lovely time loading, take this time to go down there and hit that like button. Oh wow, is it ever going to load? Oh, here we go, input handler. Okay, so what we want to look for is where when we hit this mouse down right here. So handle unit movement, where it says get mouse down and we're actually shooting that ray out. We're going to say if we hit our UI, don't do that. So let's do if input.get no, we'll do if event event system, and this isn't, we have to add a using statement. So I'm gonna hold control and hit period, and that's gonna give me this option to add this using statement. So I'm just gonna hit enter, and that adds it. If that's not working for you, it's this using statement here, using Unity engine dot event system. So I'm gonna say if event system dot current dot is pointer over game object. And now it's not any game object. This is literally specifically for our UI. So if this happens, then we just return. So that means if at any point this is running, actually we don't want this we don't want this out here. We want if at any point we left click and it's true that we're over our UI, we want it to break out of this and not do any of this nonsense. So let's save that and go back into Unity. We'll hit play. We'll hit our building, hit that plus symbol. Okay, so now we got a null reference. And the reason why is because we actually need to go onto our UI on our actions frame, and we need to add our action timer because we never did that. So let's add that component. And so we added the action to our, yeah, this should be everything. So let's double check real quick. Let's hit play. And we got our building. We got our boop, waiting for 0 seconds. So that immediately spawned. And the reason why is because I didn't set spawn timers. So let's grab these bad boys. We'll hit their spawn timers. Let's say it's 5 seconds. So now we can actually make sure that it waits 5 seconds in between each spawn. So I'll just spawn like, let's say 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're waiting 5 seconds. There's 1. And I won't have the building selected now just to see if it still works. Yep, there's 2. And we can reselect the building. It doesn't matter. There's 3. Let's see if it keeps going or if it stops like it's supposed to. And it looks like it stopped like it's supposed to. So now we got our lovely units. And there you have it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. We're starting to get a lot closer to adding some pretty cool stuff to this build. So as always, guys, until next time, peace.